Welcome to the Property Mindset Podcast. I am Emma Howitt, mentor, investor, and your guide to building wealth, freedom, and personal transformation through property. Property isn't just about bricks and mortar, it's about building the life you truly desire. In this space, we don't just talk about strategy, but we really dive deeply into mindset. And it's something that I found is actually really missing in other industries, but it's been a real game changer in the professional property circles. So today I am talking to Emma Fielding, who is absolutely incredible in what she has achieved. To start with, she started her first basically flipping business when she was just around 26, 27. She has flipped 14 properties. She has raised a whopping £2.7 million. I was on the property graduate with her where she got through to the final, and she also won the Young Property Investor of the Year. Absolutely incredible. And welcome to Emma. So, Emma, you've achieved so much at such a young age, including winning Young Property Investor of the Year. What was the one pivotal moment or mindset shift that set you on this extraordinary path?
Oh, wow. So I think going back to kind of January 21, that was the point where actually I was working in the corporate world. I was working for Morrison's. I was a finance graduate, but not really enjoying the corporate world. But actually, what I did kind of 18 months prior, that I actually bought and sold two properties. And those two properties, I made a profit. And actually, the profit that I made was more than my corporate job wage on both properties. And in
Wow.
Barnsley, where I'm from, it was quite a lot of money. So I thought, wow, there is something to this, and clearly I'm doing something right here. I'm buying well, I'm renovating the properties well, and I'm selling even better. And even in tough markets as well, bearing in mind this was just after kind of the COVID lockdowns and things. And it was January 21. I knew, I didn't like the corporate world. I was traveling 3 hours a day. And I thought, I've got to do something here because clearly I'm better at flipping houses than my corporate job. And it was literally at that point in January. And I thought, I need to leave. I need to go. So basically, I resigned. I left the corporate world behind me, not really knowing what was actually in front of me. But all I had was actually, if I put a figure on it, I had just over £100,000 that I built up from £20,000. So actually, I had the cash behind me, but I didn't really know what was in front of me. Apart from all I knew is that I wanted to leave the corporate world. I wanted to start flipping houses more, and I had a goal of 10 houses. So I thought, actually, this is the time to do it, now or never. And actually, at that point, I thought, I just got to do it. I've actually just got to do it. So I left the corporate world in January, and then a couple of months later, I sold house number 2, and then I bought house number 3, and then house number 4 was working with investors. So there was a lot that happened in the space of a couple of months, but I would say, my mindset was that I hated the corporate world. I didn't enjoy it, and that was my driving force to get out of the corporate world. But I knew I needed something else to go on to, and actually something that I was so passionate about, and still am obviously today, is property. And clearly I proved the concept that I could do it. I was doing it, and I was making more money. So for me, it was an absolute no-brainer to make that move across. So that was probably a very pivotal moment in my property career, let's call it, because I think without that, I don't think I would have achieved, the things that I have now, or at the speed that I have, as well.
So that was really a massive decision to
Yeah,
move from basically inherently security. So I know you'd obviously already done incredibly well. So you'd taken £20,000 and converted it into £100,000. I mean, that is
yeah.
huge. And that was around you being what sort of age was that?
I was about 26, 27, I
26,
think. Yeah,
27. So,
yeah, yeah,
most people at that stage, would more easily spend the 20,000 on,
Yeah, you could
going out on
easily spend
holidays.
it.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So you've done something,
absolutely.
really amazing. But that is a massive decision going from corporate protection to this brand new world. So what
Yeah.
was it that enabled you to make that decision? Because yeah, there must have been a lot of fears, um, like ba
Yeah,
massive barriers to that. So what enabled you
absolutely.
to sort of overcome that and just make that decision?
Yeah, I think to be fair, I think when I really look back at who I am and things, and my family as well, we do have five generations of business owners, but none of them really, made it to being a multimillionaire. But actually, my driving force, my deeper driving force, is that I wanted to be successful as a kid. I was around, squash players that my dad is in part of the squash world, and those people very well to do in business and things. And I was looking up at them being, a young teenage girl thinking they're going on 6 holidays a year or 8 holidays a year, or they're driving this car or they're having that house. And I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. But they weren't doing that in a corporate job. And then when I look back at my family and I think, well, why can't I, be in business and things? Why can't I make it? And I knew, very early on there was something a little bit different about me. I was definitely driven, if not a bit crazy, to step out of the mold, let's call it. And as well, I think, I am dyslexic, and I definitely do think that is a superpower as well. I think differently, I can see things, as a bigger picture, but also I like the finer detail as well. So I think all these things along the way has played a really big part in actually what I'm doing now. But I think, the big decision about leaving the corporate world is that for me personally, I wasn't with anybody. I didn't have children. I don't have children, so I really thought it was like now or never
Now or
for
never.
me personally. And again, that was the driving force behind the decision. And I thought, well, if it all goes to pot, I can just live back at my parents' house. I don't need a property. And bearing in mind, the houses that I had were really, really nice. The two properties that were mine that I was living in. But actually, to be honest, they were too big for me. Just little old me. I could have just done with a one-bedroom flat and I'd be absolutely happy. But a three bed semi in a property with a 40-foot garden was just a bit too big just for me.
A lot
So
of
again,
cleaning.
it was a lot of cleaning, and again it was COVID, and I was just like rattling around in this big house, but yet it was on a really desirable street in a place that I've wanted to live for a long time. But I was like, oh, this is not what it's cracked up to be. So anyway, obviously we did the renovation, etc., and then obviously sold it. But the driving force for me was that I didn't want a boss. I didn't want anybody telling me what to do. And when I was actually in the corporate world, I hated it. I hated every minute of it, to be honest. And I met some great people along the way and things, but I didn't enjoy it. It wasn't what I saw my life to be. But really, what I saw my life to be was running my own business, whatever that business was. If it was property or if it was something else. But it just happened to be property. And when I actually look back at my teenage years, the amount of episodes that of Homes Under the Hammer that I watched, and then I went to an auction as well when I was about 18, and I think I might have got the bug then. And always been interested in interiors and art and things like that, and being a bit creative. I think really, I was destined to be in property. To be honest, it was just a matter of when I was going to be in property, and luckily that was the moment for me where I just think, yeah, let's do it.
Wow. I mean you make it sound sort of quite easy, but there are a couple of things that you mentioned there is this big why. And I
Mm.
always talk about it, and I'm sure you do with the people that you work with as well, is this why. That is what gets you up in the morning. It keeps you going. And yours was being successful, really proving to yourself that you can get there. And then
Yeah.
you talked about having, five generations before you of business owners. So you almost had it in your subconscious that it was possible. And that was where you could go, and that was what you could achieve. So yeah, I think that's really incredible. So
Thank you,
as the
Emma.
decision making goes, so obviously you started off. So just tell us a bit how you sort of started. I know you said you started with 20,000 and you made a
Mm.
hundred. Can you just sort of talk that through? Because that was again while you were doing your corporate role. So how did that all start?
Yeah. So actually, how it started, my gran passed away, and basically my mum and her brothers and sisters inherited her house, and actually it was on the market at this particular point. And I remember obviously working in the corporate world, I got my decision in principle, so basically my mortgage, and the same estate agents that were selling my grand's house, they had this off market property that was just about to hit the market, but actually it was in a prime location in Barnsley that I knew so well and walked past so many times. I thought, I need to view this, so anyway, I think it was like a Wednesday evening. Me and my mum went to view this property, and it was basically a mid-terrace property, 3 bedrooms, but 4 floors, and it had a garage. And it was basically the only one in the row of terraces to actually have a garage. So I thought, well, this is a massive win already. And it had just been empty for the last, 5 years,
Wow.
and obviously needed just a bit of cosmetic refurb. And actually, when I look back at the refurb, we didn't really do that much in the grand scheme of things. We kept the boiler, we kept the original bathroom. We just changed the kitchen, partial rewire, no new windows, but decoration, carpets, and we tarted it up basically. And that actually, I put a 10% deposit down on the property, so I actually bought it for 96.5 grand. So that was 9.5 grand in the actual deposit. No stamp duty at the particular time because I was the first time buyer, and then a couple of grand in legals, and then the whole renovation cost me 9 grand, and I sold it for 143 grand as well. So it was a good profit, a really
Yeah,
good profit. I think about 36 grand in profit. And again, that was more money than my corporate job wage at the time. So I was thinking,
amazing.
I've just done this in 9 months, but yet my wage is 12 months and for a lot less, and stuff. So I was like, light bulb moment and things. But what I did in that renovation, I got really, really hands on, and I was managing the trades as well while I was still working in the corporate world. So not only was I seeing what was going on, I was actually physically doing a lot of the work myself as well. And that for me, bearing in mind, I didn't have any DIY skills or renovation skills at all, but I was just good with managing people. I could manage, people's expectations. I would be quite, forthright as well with them. So I got the jobs done when I needed to get done, and I'm very good with process as well. So that's really how that one came about. And then the second property, I did exactly the same. So I bought it, I think about 140k at the time, and no, 160k, sorry. Again, spent about 30 grand on it. So I took all the money from house one into house two, and then we sold that for 240k. So then I made about 33 grand on the second one. So all the equity combined then led to obviously, the 100 grand that I then started officially with property in.
Amazing, amazing. So you brought up something there which I think is tremendous, and you just kind of flipped over it. And that was working with trades and managing trades. Now, let's be fair, Emma. Most people won't be able to see you if they're listening on the podcast, but you are a very beautiful young lady who,
Thanks, Emma.
she's lovely coiffed hair and all of that. And suddenly you are at a, mid 20s, basically managing trades. I mean, that
Yeah.
must have taken some kind of mindset. How did you feel about walking into that kind of situation?
Do you know what? And I get asked this question quite a lot. I just own it. I absolutely own it. And I'm the boss on site. If you're on my properties, I'm the boss. So you've got to listen to me, because if not, you don't work. Do you know what I mean? It's that clear cut. And I guess, again, my experience has been around, squash players and, business people quite a young age, through my dad playing squash. I got to see a lot of different people, a lot of people from different walks of life, and I would speak to them, and I was like 12 up to 16, so I was learning all these communication skills. So yes, I speak to investors that are worth, X amount of millions, but I can also speak to trades, so, and that's a big difference in obviously, people and backgrounds and everything like that. So I guess for me, I've just been the one to own it. And, I am quite bold on site. I'm always shouting at the lads, and basically I'm getting this stuff done, but I'm the driving force in this. It's my business at the end of the day. Nobody else is going to make things happen apart from me. So, you've just got to own it, basically, to be honest.
Oh,
And
wow.
that's just how I am. And even this morning, I've been on site and stuff. And yeah, that's exactly what I do. And for me, it works, but I know it doesn't work for everybody. But I would say, yeah, I'm quite confident, quite outgoing. And if there's something to be done, I'll get the job done.
Amazing. So you came from this sort of finance background, and then you got your hands dirty on these jobs, working with the trades, but presumably you didn't know everything.
No,
So
definitely
how,
not.
yeah, so how did you sort of overcome that? Because that can be, again, extremely fearful, very worrying. You're driving this project forward, and you don't necessarily know how things should be done.
Definitely. So I think for me, I didn't even know how to like put in a light bulb. I mean, like that's to the point of like my DIY skills back then. But I think the main thing that I said to the trades very early on, look, I have this vision to be in property full time. And I think when you tell people your vision, they buy into it. So they're thinking, okay, well, I've got guaranteed work. I've got work for the next 10 houses, that she wants to buy, which is great. So actually, what you tend to do, you tend to build relationships with trades, but actually not just trades, you get to know them as people. And then they become, not friends, but you work quite closely with somebody. So actually, if you're asking questions, oh, why are you doing the damp proof in this way? What is that being used for? What is the risks in XYZ, for example? Quickly you start to build up a knowledge. And also, if you're pushing yourself on each renovation, bearing in mind I started with mid-terrace properties, to the point where I've done renovations where I bought a street quite recently, and they're all very different renovations. Even renovating an 1800 farmhouse, that is a completely different ball every time. So every renovation that I've done, it's always been a step up. So obviously your knowledge increases rapidly. And again, if you've got that good relationships with trades and you're asking questions, and if you're present on site, which I really, really am, and it's something that I will continue to be present on site, you quickly learn actually how things are supposed to be done, and actually the process as well. And again, back in the early days when I was actually doing it myself, there's not one part of the job what I haven't done, obviously apart from the electrics and the gas, but everything else I've done on site. So I know exactly what goes into each part to get a property from being a rundown wreck to, a beautiful house that is ready to go on the market. So, I think you only really learn truly when you get, hands on for a period of time.
This is really, really interesting because you are quite a juxtaposition. You've got a corporate background in accountancy, is that
Yep,
correct?
yep.
It's sort of the finance side of things. You've obviously then moved over and done, renovations to start with, but you've absolutely thrown yourself in on that side of it. So you seem to have a real breadth of kind of information and knowledge, but also equally what I can really hear from you is this massive passion about what you
Yeah.
do. So there's this huge element of passion that you've got, but are there elements that you've kind of forced this because you love the end product and it's moving through, it's just kind of taking action and doing it? Or is it genuinely everything that you jump on, you really enjoy?
I thoroughly enjoy renovations. I thoroughly enjoy waking up on a morning and going to site, having a laugh with the lads, but also seeing the progress and saying, actually, we need to do this, or we need to do that, or we need to change this. I'm in control constantly, obviously, throughout the renovation process and obviously the buying process as well. Selling is slightly a bit different. But at the end of the day, I love just being around, the trade and seeing the progress. My biggest passion is turning a property that's run down, derelict. One property that I've got at the minute has been empty since 1972. So it's crackers,
Wow.
absolutely bonkers, and we're turning it obviously back into a beautiful home, and actually it's sold off market as well. That for me is my biggest massive tick. I'm so happy with that. And yes, obviously the money is great, but that's secondary, to be honest. My passion is renovating the properties, and if that's passing it over for a rental or a social housing provider, or selling it on. But yeah, my passion is the renovation, and just turning something that is unloved, that people don't see the vision, but I see the vision. I know what we need to do to it. And obviously when you've got the finances behind you with the investors or myself and the trades as well, it's like, well, it's a no-brainer. Let's just do it.
Yeah. It is so important. Well, for me as well, like there's a few areas that I've invested in. I mean, they're all pretty close. We don't have massive cities around us, but there's one particular area and it's all kind of 1960s houses. They're quite boring. And then there's other areas where they're really, huge Victorian buildings. And I
Yeah,
absolutely love that, going in and really
yeah,
seeing that kind of vision and seeing the history of it as well.
of
So I'm
course,
sure
yeah.
you'll have some stories about your 18th century farmhouse. Um,
Yeah, there's some stories on that one.
so you've basically you've started off doing this flipping, and then you chose to stop your corporate career. You're now headlong. Now, a lot of people have kind of shiny penny syndrome, and they want to do this and they want to do that and they want to do the other. But it seems to me that you have really kept on with this, very much finding a probably run down below market value property, doing it
Yeah.
up and then selling it on. What helped you make that decision to just stick with that strategy?
Yeah, so my first kind of goal actually when I got started was just to flip 10 houses, just to get to 10 houses, see whereabouts we're at, financially, and where the market was. Bearing in mind when I started, the market was booming. And to be fair, it is still like relatively so in areas and things. So I thought, you know what, let's just flip 10 houses, let's just go for it. And then obviously when then we get to 8 to 9 to 10, and we've got kind of scalability within the business as well, then I obviously now work with a main contractor that takes a lot of the headache away from me. I thought, right, let's just push that to 15 properties. And yeah, I have got asked, before, why are you not going into rentals, or why not going to HMOs and this, that, and the other? And my pure thinking was that, my original plan really was to get into property when I was 40, that semi-retired type of thing, a couple of buy-to-lets and that type of stuff. But actually, I got into property when I was like 26, 27. So I'm like so many years ahead of where I ever thought I would be. So, while the cash is coming in, and while obviously, you're making, good money out of them, let's just flip more of them. So then that's when I saw an opportunity. And actually, when an opportunity came to me, was to buy a street,
Yes, tell us
with,
about
with
this. I want to know.
with
Tell us
three
about a
houses on it.
street.
So yeah, I bought a street in West Yorkshire, which
Wow.
was pretty cool. It was up for auction, but it actually didn't sell at auction, and it was never going to sell at auction because it was so overpriced. So anyway, I was actually down in London, seeing my investor the next day, and I already kind of give him a bit of pre-warning that we could potentially get this deal if it doesn't sell at auction. Luckily, obviously, it didn't sell, and I phoned up the auctioneers. I said, "Look, give me 24 hours to secure the money, but I'll be buying this." So anyway, 24 hours later, I was in the office with one of my investors down in London. I said, "Look, we need to buy this, but we need to buy it at below market value price." So it's basically three properties, two semis, one detached, and some garages at 595. That was the reserve price. We got it for 550, and we had to actually complete on the deal before multiple dwellings relief actually ended,
Oh,
which was the 31st of May, if I'm right. Yeah, 31st of May. So we only had a really small window to actually complete. Bearing in mind, we saved thousands, obviously using the multiple dwellings relief and things. And actually, now it's not really there. I think you got to buy 6 or more houses now,
Yeah.
so it wouldn't actually apply in today's world. But anyway, so basically, yeah, we bought the 3 houses. We bought the street. My first plan, again, when you're looking at deals, you want to have multiple exits and things. And in this one, that the detached property actually had planning for a double-story extension, but I actually didn't like the planning. Bearing in mind the planning was done 10 years ago, but it was still active as well, so I could build it if I wanted right now, but I just didn't. So my plan was actually to put the whole lot back into the auction, but on an individual basis. So the semis, back into the auction as basically 2, and then the detached as well. So over 3 weekends over in the summer, we had these open days where basically anybody could look around these houses, and they're all at 200 grand each, which obviously made it far more attractive than paying 600 grand. So anyway, the detached sold. So we sold the detached property without doing any work to it. We made a profit on that, so that was good. Then we reduced the investors' debt as well, actually in the deal, so he got some money back within 3 months, which was fantastic for him. And then really for me, where the money was actually renovating the 2 semis. So again, one of the semis was the one that's been empty since 1972, and yes, we're renovating them now. Actually, one has already sold. One sold at 415, and the other one's going on the market for 425. So overall, that deal is actually over £1 million deal, because we sold the detached at 236 as well. And actually, we pretty much doubled the money from actually where we bought it to where we sold it. We've doubled the money, and the profit in that is over 200k. So it's not a bad deal at all. But again, to do a deal like that, you need the cash first to actually do it, basically. And stuff. So that's why it didn't sell at auction.
Amazing. Well, it wasn't your money as well. It was your investors' money. So
Yeah, it was investors' money on that one. But how I structure it is that my company or my money goes into the refurb, the legals, the stamp duty, and then the investors get the return on their investment that way.
oh, interesting. So you clearly have so much knowledge. I mean, you've talked about some very specific things in there, knowing that the multiple dwellings relief was coming to an end,
Yeah.
knowing that you can buy 3 and then sell them off back into auction individually. And yeah, so you talk about a lot of very in-depth things that you would have needed to learn. So have you done courses? Have you had mentorship? Are you just a massive learner? How have you got this information?
Do you know what about? I've done no property courses
You
whatsoever.
must be the only one.
I've done nothing. I've done no property courses whatsoever. I haven't paid 20 grand for a property course or anything daft like that, because I just don't see the point at all. I think, to be honest, where my knowledge has come from is surrounding yourself with people that are 5, 10, 20 steps ahead of you, which I've continued to do that. But also as well, I'm not afraid to take a risk as well. I try and learn all the possible risks, or what I need to get a deal over the line, or whatever an issue is, I can always try and find a solution to it. And my kind of philosophy is, if there's a problem, there's always a solution as well. So yeah, I haven't done any property courses, which is interesting.
That is amazing. Well, hats off to you. I mean, for me, I couldn't have got there. It was a bit like when I had a child. Like everyone said to me, "Oh, it'll just come really naturally for you." And I was like, "No, it doesn't." I was actually getting the book out. What do I do? What do I do? So
Do you
I
know
think
what? Probably having a child would be far more scary than like the deals that I do, to be honest.
oh, hilarious. And I had 2 at the same time, so that was
Oh my God,
ridiculous. And they wouldn't take
scary.
them back.